You know, sometimes life feels like you're stuck in a tunnel. You keep walking, you keep pushing, but no matter how far you go, you can't see the light at the end. It's like every step forward feels heavier than the last, like you're sinking deeper into the unknown. And in those moments, it's so easy to wonder, God, where are you? Before we dig deeper, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video to join us on this transformational journey together when silence feels like abandonment. I've been there. I know exactly what it feels like to cry out to God, and all you hear in response is silence. It's tough. It's painful. We expect God to show up in big, obvious ways, don't we? We want miracles. We want the Red Sea to part. We want our prayers answered immediately, but when He doesn't show up like we expect, it's easy to ask, God, are you even listening? Are you still with me? Here's the thing. Just because you can't see God working doesn't mean He's not. I've learned something along the way. Sometimes, the most powerful work God does happens behind the scenes. It reminds me of when we plant seeds. For weeks, it seems like nothing's happening. We water the soil, we check every day, and there's no sign of life. But all along, underneath the surface, that seed is taking root. It's growing in ways we can't see until one day it breaks through the ground. That's how life is with God. We don't always see the progress immediately. We don't always see the answers. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean God's forgotten you. He's laying the foundation for something greater. And it's not just about waiting for the big breakthroughs. Sometimes, we're so focused on the miraculous that we miss how God shows up in the little things. It's the kind words from a friend when you needed it the most. It's the unexpected peace you feel in the middle of a chaotic day. It's the strength to keep going. Even when you feel like giving up, these moments, they're whispers from God reminding you, I'm still here. I'm still working. Faith isn't about having all the answers. Faith is about trusting in God's goodness even when we don't understand, even when we don't know the why, the when, or the how. We trust in the who. And let me tell you something. Sometimes God doesn't give us clarity right away. Sometimes He asks us to take a step forward in faith, even when we can't see the full picture. You might feel like you're in a season of waiting right now. Maybe you're waiting for answers. Maybe you're waiting for direction. Maybe you're waiting for that breakthrough you've been praying for. But here's what I want you to know. God's timing is perfect. We don't always understand it, but there's purpose in the waiting. Sometimes, just like the seed, God is preparing us for what's ahead. He's shaping us, refining us, and getting us ready for something greater. I'm reminded of how God was with Moses. You remember the story? The Israelites were stuck between the Red Sea and an approaching army. From a human perspective, it was hopeless. There was no way out. But God was already preparing a miracle. The sea didn't part until the last possible moment. But when it did, the path forward became clear. That's how God works sometimes. He waits until the very last moment to show us the way, not because He's forgotten, but because He's teaching us to trust Him, even when we can't see the way forward. Trusting God is a choice, and sometimes it's the hardest choice we'll ever make. When everything around you feels like it's falling apart, and you can't see the next step, choosing to trust feels like stepping off a cliff. But here's the thing. You're not forgotten. You're not alone in this. You don't have to carry the weight of it all on your shoulders. God is still working, even when you don't feel it, even when you don't see it. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is stop trying to fix everything ourselves. We hustle, we strive, we try to control every detail. But Psalm 46:10 tells us, be still and know that I am God. Sometimes, it's okay to just breathe, to let go of the need to have all the answers, to trust that God is in control, even when it feels like chaos. When you stop and quiet your soul, You create space for God to speak to your heart. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." You may feel weak right now. You may feel like you've been running on empty for too long. But when you trust in God, He renews your strength. You may not feel it right away, but God is restoring you, preparing you to soar. Maybe it's in your career, maybe it's in your spiritual life, or maybe it's in your relationships. But there's one common thread. You feel trapped, stuck in the same cycle, and no matter what you do, you can't break free. The first step to getting out of a rut is recognizing you're in one. Most people don't even realize it. You tell yourself you're just tired or it's just a phase. But if every day feels like you're going through the motions, like you're doing things just because you have to, not because you want to, you're in a rut. A rut feels like being trapped on a hamster wheel, running and running but getting nowhere. The same frustrations, the same empty routines, and a growing sense of dissatisfaction. Let's talk about how you got here. No one wakes up one day and decides, "I want to feel stuck." Ruts form gradually. It happens when life gets busy, when distractions pile up, when you start living on autopilot. Maybe you were so focused on your career that you didn't notice your spiritual life fading. Maybe you got too comfortable in your relationships and stopped nurturing them. Or maybe you've been holding on to guilt or fear that's keeping you from moving forward. Busyness is the enemy of clarity. When your mind is constantly cluttered, it's impossible to see where you're going, or even realize that you're stuck. Here's something we don't talk about enough. Ruts aren't just physical or emotional, they're spiritual. When your relationship with God becomes a routine, when your prayers feel like empty words, when your faith feels more like a checkbox than a lifeline, you're in a spiritual rut. The enemy loves ruts. Why? Because when you're stuck, you're not moving forward in God's purpose. You're distracted, disconnected, and disheartened. But here's the truth. God didn't create you to live in cycles of frustration. He created you to live in freedom. Ruts thrive on routine. The same actions produce the same results. So if you want to break free from a rut, you need to shake things up. Start with small changes. Get outside. Spend time in nature. Set new goals. Goals that stretch you beyond your comfort zone. Learn something new every day. When you break your routine, you wake up your mind and your spirit. Changing your routine isn't about avoiding responsibilities. It's about finding new life in the everyday. God has new mercies for you every morning. But if you're stuck in the same patterns, you might miss them. Here's something you need to know. No matter how far you've drifted, no matter how disconnected you feel, God is always waiting for you to come back. He's never left your side. You just stopped looking in His direction. To break out of a spiritual rut, you need to intentionally reconnect with God. Spend time in His Word, not just reading it, but letting it read you. Ask yourself, where have I strayed? What has taken my focus away from God? Sometimes we get so busy asking God for things that we forget to simply be still in His presence, in the quiet, in the stillness. That's where healing begins. That's where clarity is found. Gratitude changes everything. When you're in a rut, it's easy to focus on what's wrong, on what's missing, on what you don't have. But gratitude shifts your focus. It reminds you of the blessings you already have, the goodness that's still around you. You weren't meant to break out of a rut alone. God created us for community. The people you surround yourself with have a huge impact on your mindset and your spiritual health. So ask yourself, are the people around you helping you grow or keeping you stuck? Find a community that lifts you up, that encourages you to pursue God's purpose. Whether it's a church group, a mentor, or a group of friends, surround yourself with people who remind you of who you are in Christ. One of the reasons people fall into a rut is because they lose sight of their purpose. They start living for survival instead of living for impact. But here's the truth. God has a purpose for your life, and it's bigger than just making it through the day. Take a step back and ask yourself, what has God called me to do? What unique gifts has He given me? How can I use those gifts to serve others and glorify Him? When you realign your life with God's redefining your purpose. If this video is resonating with you, subscribe to our channel, like this video and comment, "I'm ready to find my purpose." Also, share this message with someone who needs to hear it. See you in the next video.